If you are with us, we are so excited that you're here. And we would love for you to start drumming some stuff up in the comments, because until then, we're not exactly sure who you are. And I don't know about you, Rob. Actually, I do know about you. I'm going to make an assumption that for you, it's just as important to have names, or not just as important, more important to have names than numbers. So feel free to start getting some stuff going on in those comments as Rob and I kick this off together. This is effectively the second time Rob and I have ever talked, like ever. We've been in each other's spheres for a long time. Rob, since before you launched your book, or that I saw that come through on LinkedIn way back in the day. That was a few years ago, I think.
That was a couple years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm still not seeing anything. Can you see things? You're the expert with this. Hold on.
I'm not seeing anything. All I know is that I checked and we were definitely live, but I don't know how this particular platform works as far as you seeing comments or numbers or names or anything.
Okay, hold on. I do see that we are live. Sorry, everyone. Seriously, if you have done this with me before, you know how important it is. Okay, let's dive in. So this conversation begins, after all this troubleshooting, with a single envelope. Rob, you have that envelope, I think. And this envelope has already traveled over 4,000 miles, and I had to look that up in kilometers for all of us Europeans and Canadians, as Rob is. It has traveled over 6,000 kilometers. And we are here. Drop in the chat where you're at, because I want to see the expanse that we're beginning to create with this ultimate question. So that is the first place that we're starting. And what this is really about, this is the third in a series of live events that combines snail mail with live video to inspire daringly real conversation. And Rob and I, we have no idea what's going on or what's going to happen. And that's the fun, the mystery, and that is where things are really going to start to click and catalyze. But I'm not even going to say too much about that, because this isn't towards an outcome today. Right, Rob? We're here. Yeah. So a few things. The way that this works, oh good, Berlin, we got it. We're starting, we're rolling. I'm in Berlin, Rob is in Toronto. And the way that this has worked is that Rob and I had a conversation a few weeks ago. And after that conversation, a question arose. And I wrote that question down, put it in an envelope, and sent it to Rob. He has it in front of him. He has not looked at it. And we are about to see what that question is. But before we do, I want to make note of a few things. One is, if you don't know me, I am Elayna. The only thing that you need to know about me is that in business and beyond business, I'm an artist. So I'm approaching everything that I do with an artist's curiosity, which has me questioning a lot of things and also just asking a lot of questions. And that's what this energy is from, it's born from. And for me, I really believe that we have gotten so tied up in the answer that we've lost track of the questions. And the questions are what truly get into the corners of our minds and pull out those things that we can't see because we're so caught up in patterns and whatever else there may be. So that's what this space is coming from. And this is more than just a space for Rob and I. It's a space for you. You may resonate with the question that is in that envelope. You may resonate with another question that we don't even know what it is yet. But above everything, or below everything, depending on how we want to look at it, this space is about a realness. And we all are craving that, I believe. That's why this is working. So tap into that energy with us and take that into the rest of your week. And we will as well. So let's start kind of moving towards Rob and away from all the framing of this in the beginning. Rob, I asked you, what do people need to know about you? And you gave me two really wonderful things. Do you remember what they are? I can prep them for you if.
I think I remember what one of them was, but you're going to need to prep me. I'm so sorry if you want me to answer.
No, it's good. I was planning to, but I could see a little bit there, so I wasn't sure. So Rob said to me, hold on, I've got to make sure that I have it. Robb said to me, here we go. I want to get it exactly. I feel like I know nothing and I am just getting started. And also, I cried tears of joy rather frequently. Those were your exact words, and I love them. They're a great place for us to start. So without further ado, let's look at that question that you have in front of you, and we can dive in whatever way you feel fit, whether it's addressing the question straight up or talking around it until the answer lands.
All right, let's open it up. What I was sharing before we went live with Elayna that you all didn't hear is I've been lucky enough to do, I think, 70 plus live streams and podcasts at this point. I feel very comfortable, very confident. And I can just show up. But today I felt butterflies. Today, the unknown, the mystery of this added this layer where I was like, ooh, I have feelings. All right, we have the question. Oh my God. What do you never want to know? Woo! I'm going to share the immediate thing that came up, which is deeply personal. And then I'm going to let it simmer. And I think there might be more answers that come to it later. There is someone who is near and dear to me. And I suspect that there's two people in a relationship that are really near and dear to me. And I suspect that one of them has been unfaithful to the other. And there's reasons that make me believe that they may have been unfaithful. And I never want to know. I never want that bubble burst. I don't. Whew.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's. Ooh. That's coming from a deep place.
Yeah. That is, I mean, I can really feel that with you. And it almost feels as though there's no prying to do in that. That is, like my usual tendency is to ask a question. And that feels so, what you shared feels so sacred that I think all of us here can tap into what you just created for us.
Thank you. Thank you for creating a space to allow me to connect with such a thing, and then also have the grace to know that it's not one to be pride in. Obviously, these kinds of conversations, coaching, any kind of the realness that you're trying to create with this, and I would say now that we're in it, are creating with this, is about the depths and normally requires layered questions. And but yeah, I think if we don't probe there, that's probably the right approach. But I'm going to let it sit because I think there's other answers to that question, because it's such a powerful question, such a wonderful question.
Well, maybe if there's something that you feel you want to go to right away, great. The other thing it makes me think of is just the overall question of wanting to know versus not wanting to know. I think that there would be people here in space here that the answer would be the opposite. And I think it's beautiful that we can create a space where all of that can exist and we can explore into both spaces. Yeah,
that's a really great place to take it. Yeah, there's definitely the ignorance is bliss, right? And we do this in our own lives in so many different ways. It can be with our health, it can be with all sorts of different things, and the not knowing allows us to continue on a certain path and keep joy, peace. And even if it is built a bit on a facade, so it's a little wonky, like the foundation might be like, how stable is that foundation? But for me in this situation, it definitely is ignorance is bliss. And I'd rather keep, even if it is built on a false foundation, bliss in this scenario, knowing that I'm lying to myself, knowing that, and I am not a stranger to lying to myself. I'll joke about it sometimes, and I do these tricks on myself, but there's something I need to do, something I want to do. I won't use the should word, but there's something, and it could be something
Yeah.
that's important in my business. It could be a sink full of dishes, and I'll say, I'll just wash one plate. I'll just wash one plate. Full well knowing that 99 times out of 100, if I start to wash one plate, I'm probably going to wash a second one. And if I wash a second one, I start to feel momentum. Well, what if I do a third one? And before I know it, the dishes are all done. And I do it with things I have to type up, things I have to create. If I'm working on a new deck, I was like, what if I just created a bullet? I'll just come up with the first bullet.
Yeah.
And I know I'm lying to myself, but it works. So I think it's the same thing
Mhm.
here. Like, of course, I know I'm lying to myself, but I am choosing to, like, this potentially built on false pretenses joy is worth it. The bliss of the ignorance is worth it.
Yeah. Well, I wanna look at that. There's 2 things that are going on for me. One is I wanna examine the lie. But before we do that, I wanna preface it with something, because one of the things that I've been experiencing a lot is there are aspects within my own life, I know that, like my personal life, I know that if I try to share to other people right now, they aren't gonna be able to follow where I've been and where I'm at because of how strictly energetic that is. And it's terrifying because we're so used to having the language for welcoming people into where we're at so that we can have that validation and that society can give us a pat on the back or whatever it is. And if I'm not making enough sense, I can share a little bit more, but this is not about like, let's bring out our dirty laundry. That is not what real means. Like, it's very interesting to look at what real actually means. That is not what real means in my definition. Um, so so then that has really made me have to stretch into what is it I'm creating and where do I place trust, which makes me think about the foundation that you're talking about, because I feel like what I can sense from what you're saying is there's like a typical sense of the foundation, and then there's this sense that you're building, which is kind of outside maybe how we typically think of it. I don't know. I'm making a little bit of an assumption there, but I'd like to offer that to you to hear from you how you're feeling about what you're actually creating, and then we can get to the lie part that I want that this might snowball right into that. But what when you think about the foundation that you're actually creating, tell me about that.
Hmm. I see it as maybe the opposite, is that the foundation is there, and there's a bunch of other people standing on it that believe in the foundation, see the foundation, don't question the foundation, are enjoying the benefits of the foundation. And
Mm,
I feel like I've been given a tilted view where I'm seeing it differently, where I'm like, uh-oh, actually, spidey senses and certain things are making me think that it's not what it's made out to be.
hmm.
And the choice I'm making is to push that away, continue to buy into the same story foundation that everyone else is perceiving, to not tip the cart, to not upset everything and everyone.
Yeah. And if you're truly buying in, what does that mean about what it actually is?
Hmm. If I'm truly buying in, this is interesting to go to this layer, because I was in a really deep conversation with some people yesterday about how it's all made up, about it's all
Mm,
fabricated, and we all walk
mhm.
around with this collection of thoughts and beliefs. I'm this person. I'm driven. I'm lazy. I'm overweight. I'm always been this way. Money is this. Life is that. This sport is good. That sport's bad. Whatever. Like, just nonsense. It's crazy. And we collect all this stuff, and then we believe it to be true, and it becomes our filter of the world. And then the world is reflected to us in that way. And I had a really crazy, powerful vision last week in a session guided by Pippa Hayward. I want to shout out Pippa. And essentially, I got this vision that I zoomed up above everything. And all of a sudden, I saw the entire world as if I was looking down on a floor plan or like a dollhouse that the roof was cut off. And I could see all the individual sections. And I could see that this group over here, like this religion is true. And this way over here, they all believe in this. And in this way over here, like this is what it means to be a Berliner. And over here, it was like, this is what it means to be this. And how it was just all bullshit. It was all made up. And I was able to get that above view. And me thinking about what it means to, to believe the lie or embrace it, or it's just making me realize that, yeah, it's just another fabrication. It's all a fabrication. It's all stories. And we use stories as a way to gather people together to fight for a good cause, or, and in this case, me continuing to believe or choosing to believe is a story I'm telling myself too. And it goes back to the, to just have the peace, have the bliss, have the joy instead.
Yeah. Do you think it's instead? Do you think it's a this or a that?
I feel it's that, and I think it's why I don't want to know it. I really do feel that it's like, I agree with you. I see most things on a spectrum, on a continuum. There's a lot more gray than we like to believe in the way things are often painted, black or white, on or off. And I am more of a spectrum person in almost any scenario. This feels so important, so fragile, that one dot of gray means the entire thing is gray. Like it's just like one brick is removed, the whole thing collapses. So I do feel, in a sense, this scenario, it is all or nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I can sense that. And there's a question under that question that I'm wondering if I can get to. Here's what this is a roundabout way, because I don't know if I can land any other way. I've been reading this book lately. It's called The 5 Invitations. It's right here. It's discovering what death can teach us about living fully. And one of the things that he said in it was this idea, not this idea, I mean, it's what we're all doing every second of every day, usually, making things right or wrong. And what he was offering was, because we hear all the time, like, well, we're assigning that meaning, right? And what he offered was an actual solution to that, I felt, because it was less about dropping the right and wrong. And he only used 2 words. It was just, you're working on it. I think that's more than 2 words, but the working on was what I was coming from. Like language is both
it's less words than there are fingers on a hand. So yes, it's only a few words.
But the idea of, rather than looking at the thing as good or bad, that there's this working on piece. And to me, that blasted open everything. And maybe that's what, rather than like what I was asking you being this or that, but like and I don't know if this works. I'm not sure if I'm able to get this out of me and if it makes sense to you yet, but like the getting out of the this or that or the right or wrong, and just being in this place of being and working with it, I mean, on it almost implies that you would have to know what it is, but the working with it, does that resonate with you, or what other spaces are we creating here in this?
Well, the working on it space, it's creating something in me, and it's another approach I take with a lot of situations, which is just empathy. That anyone, like if I think about someone who says a nasty comment, someone who lashes out, someone who is rude or whatever, someone who's insert any typically not considered a good thing, a negative thing, that if you were willing and able to sit with empathy, and if you were able to find out more about that person, about the day they're having, about the relationships in their lives, about their childhood, that you would find that as some way, shape, or form, that's like, this is an outcome of some unfortunate things. It's always the case if you were willing and able to do the dig. And then if I take those two ideas, the one you presented me, and with that, I have in this situation thought before too, okay, let's sit and entertain the fact, like, well, what if it is true? What if what I think I'm seeing is actually there? And what if I did know that was true? And what if I was to use empathy in that situation? You know, what would have led to this have happened? And you know,
Yeah.
is the person working on it? And um, this thing of believing that certain people are perfect, or like holding people in a high regard, when the reality is we're all humans, and humans are messy and imperfect. And so, yes, and then that can get me back onto a spectrum
Hmm.
of consideration versus it having to be a dichotomy.
Yeah. Yeah. I also really liked what I wrote down here is I liked how you said, look at and play out what you think that you're seeing. Because I think that that is something that we can continuously look at in everything that we're doing every second of every day. Like, what do I think that I'm seeing? And playing each of those things out. Like, there's a really beautiful bridge with that language beyond just this one really deep thing of like, oh shit, you know? Um, what, like that bridge that you created with that language, I really appreciate that.
I thank you for calling that out. And I think bridges is something that we need more of. And if I think about, so the magic of you and I connecting, it's thanks to the internet. It's thanks to these digital tools. It's thanks to these online communities. How fantastic is that to find these people on the other side of the world that you can build awesome relationships, exchange ideas, get into deep conversations with. And as well documented and shown, that the downside of some of these platforms is the way the algorithms are built to get you to stay on as long as possible will just show you things that they're like, this is going to reinforce beliefs we think you already have. And then
Hmm.
it just makes it harder and makes people more polarized. And then it's more difficult for people to get into conversation and to consider different opinions and to look at the gray between their two polarizing points together and discuss what might be in the middle, and the bridges of contact, community, and connection. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. I mean, the other piece of that too is the endless comparison that happens and how we know that that's there and how we know that others don't. Intellectually, we know that others don't have it figured out. But oh my gosh, I get caught up in that all the time. Of course, like we are biologically prone to seeing each other and trying to figure out where that bridge is. And so all of this, it's not. I like to use comparison as a way for building that bridge back into ourselves and then being able to build it back out. I say that with all the love in the world because most of the time that, like I'm very critical on myself, right? Like I'm going to be the first one to admit that. Um, but yeah, I find that that is a huge aspect of this space that has built such beautiful bridges too. Um, it's learning those translations in any given moment.
It really is. We've gotten a great comment here from Jess. Can
Ah,
you see it
yeah.
on the side?
Yes, I can. Love the quote there. Oh, I can actually pull this in. How do I do that? Hold on. Just a sec. Here we go.
Hey,
Yeah. There are no perfect men in the world, only perfect intentions. Ah, yes.
that's a great quote.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah, that's the Stephen Covey. It's one of the habits, one of the biggest takeaways from Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. If you have not read that book, it might be because it was published in 1989, so it is old, but it is a timeless book for a reason. And there's a whole premise in there that talks about when there is friction, when there is disagreement, when there is a challenge between you and someone else, we are really damn good at judging ourselves based on our intentions and judging others based on their impact. And that creates friction. because it doesn't matter what the other person's intention was, it's the impact. And that's what we get mad about. That's what we get frustrated about. That's what we call them out about. But then we'll say, well, that wasn't my intention. That wasn't my intention. We'll use that as a defense. So I love this quote. Thanks for sharing, Jess.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm letting that sit and taking that in. Like my intentions. Yeah. Cause I mean, we're experiencing, it's similar to the idea that when we say something versus how we're acting, right? Those don't always match up, and that can be the source of so much pain. Yeah. Where have you experienced that recently, Rob?
Oh, probably weekly in my personal relationship, like all the time. It's like I say something, do something, it didn't have the intent, and I hear or see what the impact of what I'll call in hindsight like my stupidity or ignorance or whatever, like my lack of thoughtfulness. And then it goes the other way too. And I'm grateful because I've got this incredible relationship with Melissa, my fiance, and we will use a line with each other quite frequently when we get wound up in the situations. And the line is, and actually to credit, I think it's a Brene Brown thing, which is the story I'm telling myself is.
Yeah.
So this is the story I'm telling myself. You're mad at me because of this. I fucked up because of that. I'm a terrible person because of this. Like frame whatever, because the human mind is great at making up stories. We'll fill in the gaps and things we don't know, and rarely will fill in the gaps in a way that is loving and kind to ourselves. We'll tend to fill in the gaps in a way that is not so great. So having that as tools allows us to navigate the intentions versus impact thing that comes up.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I'm feeling pulled back to that, the thing that I had said about the lie, right? Like what does a lie even mean when we're choosing to see what we're choosing to see?
Because then it puts me in the role of co-creation of it. That's a really interesting take. Yeah, because there's what is, and then there's what I'm choosing to see, and then me choosing to not explore further or to poke further or whatever. So now I'm in co-creation. Now I am also part facilitating, which is a really interesting way to look at it. So then I take on some responsibility, which is good, I think. I'm not necessarily like a Jocko Willink, like Navy SEALs, extreme ownership to the extreme of like being violent with yourself kind of thing. But I do think you owning as much as you can within your sphere, within your orbit, within your life allows you then to drive it. Because in that case, like if I'm co-creating, it's like, cool, then I have the clay. I also have the clay. How do I want to construct it? I then have the ability to make changes to it. Thank you for bringing that up. That's cool.
And is it a lie if that's, I mean, does it even matter to define it that way?
Yeah, it doesn't. Right back into the properly back into the gray and being more on a spectrum versus having to be a yes, no, a black or white or good or bad.
Yeah. Well, and I love the clay analogy too. I can feel it. I mean, it's clay, right? But like I can really feel it, and clay is also quite gray or earth toned too, to throw things back into where we all come from and mold it back up and back down and back up. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wanna kind of loop us back around and look at that question again, and ask, as we've been exploring and meandering, has anything else come up? Or when you look at that question again, is there anything else that comes up in relation to it? Sorry if you could just hear that buzzer. Someone just buzzed at the door. I don't know if you could hear it on your side.
I heard it. I thought it was a drill for a second.
Oh man, that was like almost perfectly. Well, there you go. There it is again. Yeah,
it's interesting. The only other thing that's come up has been hypothetical, and then it doesn't feel like I don't hypothetical things, and I'll share the one that came up, but it doesn't have the same weight. But like anything else in real life, like whether, you know, we can go crazy, like are aliens real, or anything else in like my personal life, big, small or big. There's nothing else where I think I don't want to know, where I'm choosing to never want to know. And then the only other place my mind went to is to hypotheticals. And I don't know how much we got into when we chatted the first time, but short version for you and for everyone here, as far as my journey so far, I've been through some very big changes, completely changed who I am, how I live my life, the things I do as a job, the ways I work. And when I was younger, I sold drugs in high school, was wrapped up in some not so great things, and I got away from that and focused full time on music, pursued music, made a career out of it, had a record label, traveled. It was incredible until the late nights, the drinking, and the unhealthy lifestyle literally almost killed me and put me into such a depressive state. And I hated the person who I was. And it's wild to think how different I am compared to that person. But I almost took my life. Like I was belt around my neck, ready to do it. And what hit me at the very last moment was the deep pain and suffering that I was feeling, that I was trying to run away from. And that's why I was that close. All I was going to do was hand that to my children by going through with it. And they sure hell wouldn't know how to deal with it. And I had to share all that because this context is important, because then this next part doesn't make sense unless you know that. And that is the only thing that's come up with this question is hypothetical, like what would it have been like for them?
Yeah.
Because I see them flourishing now.
I'm creating all this gratitude for past Robb to allow future Robb and all your future everythings be here, Robb.
Thank you. It's great because they're 18 and almost 16 and very creative and expressive and funny and just these incredibly inspiring humans. And so grateful, so grateful. And I could talk at length about the things that they're building and the things they're creating and the wonderful energy they're putting out into the world. And just obviously it makes me really proud as a parent. So yeah, that would be the only other thing. It's hypothetical, but it's still heavy. Like it's still like a what if around there. So
yeah, powerful. I mean, I feel like that what if is filled now with inspiration. Like that's what I sense from you in terms of this co-creative, beautiful space that you and your children and everyone around that has been part of. And also the power of the story, kind of to bring that back into this, because our parents' stories are so poignant for us too. I don't even really know how to understand a lot of that yet, I think. Because one of my questions is about them and this story, and it almost feels not too soon to ask is not really what I mean, but like a forever dance that might not warrant a question.
It's interesting because I shielded them from it for years because there's no need for them to know. They were told they weren't allowed to read my book because the story is documented in there. And then I started doing some speaking and started doing some public speaking, and leading up to a talk I gave in January, I knew that this was going to be the center of what I was going to be talking on stage about. And so I didn't want them hearing through the grapevine or from seeing a clip on Instagram or something. So I had the conversation with them and shared it with them both. And with one of them, the conversation was kind of funny, but with the other one, they thanked me. They thanked me for sharing that with them. And they also thanked me for making the choice that I did. So there's already some of that happening. Yeah, it's interesting to think about.
Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing us in, Rob. Because you're right, that is a powerful what if, a powerful not wanting to know. And it does take significant context. Otherwise, the depth of it just is lost upon us. Yeah.
I didn't know what was going to happen in this conversation, but I didn't think I came in expecting that I'd cry twice.
Well, you want to know what is insane, absolutely insane, Rob, is the two things that you wanted to preface your side of this with. It was I feel like I know nothing and I'm only just getting started. So like the whole not wanting to know, knowing nothing thing, and the I cry tears of joy rather frequently. I feel like there is no like the happenstance, the serendipity of your intro and that question and the unfolding of this conversation. I mean, shit, we cannot plan this. This is about as real as it gets right here. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I sense a slight interest in, we've got a few minutes left here. And before I don't know, I'm this might just blow the cap off of everything. And then I'll try to bring us back quickly. But I feel like I would be remiss not to ask this question because I think it's really interesting to look at what you do want to know after exploring what you don't want to know. Is there something that feels on the tip of your tongue with that question?
I'm going to sit with it for a second. The only things that come up are things that I feel that I am starting to know, or I am on the path to know. Like there's no thing that feels behind a wall or door or a secret. And it's more about, I spent years neglecting my physical body, not thinking, like I believe one of the beliefs I held about myself that weren't true is that I was weak. And really only in the last few years I started to take my health seriously and started exercising, working out, and now I kickbox. And like, I feel I've never felt better, stronger, healthier. And I want to know where this goes. I want to know what my limits are. As someone who's in his mid-40s, who's taking his health seriously, I want to know what it's like to be 50, to be 60, to be traveling to different places. I want to know what it's like to have children who are, carving their own paths and maybe getting married, or maybe I'll be lucky enough one day to be a grandfather. So there's just those kinds of things, but I feel that I'm on that path. I feel like I'm there.
Yeah.
I think we would have done this a couple years ago, definitely say 5 years ago, before I started Growth Habit and started doing what I'm doing now. There would have been would want to know, could I build my own thing? Could I pivot in my 40s? Could I start creating something completely? But I have that evidence now. And so that feels good. And I don't feel there's anything I want to know there. And heck, even on that, there would have been a year ago, a year and a half ago, maybe as recent as 8 months ago, it would have been like, well, there would have been that same thing about my health around, like, how far can I push this? Can I get what's a 7-figure business look like? What can I make multi-millions? And then I just started questioning, whose goals are those? Like, where's the line of enough? And then I was lucky enough to start being in other circles and masterminds around other people who have similar values to me, but got caught up in more for more sake, and got caught up in what feels like the entrepreneurial version of the corporate ladder, which is like, okay, we got a 6-figure business, you need a 7-figure business. Oh, well, have you hired anyone? Well, have any clients? And blah, blah, blah. And like, how many followers you have? And it's just like this building for building's sake. And it's out of just ego and the ladder's on the wrong wall. And I reset that. And now it's like, well, how much do I want? And what if it's more about the amount of people I get to impact? And then what if I'm prioritizing the amount of time I have in a given week for creativity, for quality time with my family, so that I can go to kickboxing 3 times a week, so that I can spend more time in nature? And
Yeah.
that's not something that's going to go in a bio, or no one's going to maybe say before I go on stage and give a talk, or, it's not part of my brag line, but maybe that's better.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like we're moving towards creating a world where there is more space for that to be part of it. There's so much to unpack there. What I really felt and what you were saying about what you want to know, I think that we typically think of knowing as so concrete, but what I felt you articulating was wanting to be in the experience, wanting to live, like wanting that as you're already on that path to want more of what you're already creating. And I think like this is perfect timing actually, for all of us to tune into that energy that Robb just created as a gift for all of us to go forth in, because we tend to highlight the knowing and the answers, and we forget to look at the path that we're already on, and just the energy that's already flowing through us. Yeah, before we did this, Robb, I kind of got into this space, and I welcomed you into this home that I know so well, where I know where everything is. And I just asked you to tell me a story. I gave you a gin and tonic. I don't know if you like gin and tonics, but in this vision that I was creating, maybe in an old life you would have, but yeah, just because like that house, like it's already in me. What you're talking about is already in you. There's a space here that is already in us that we get to tap into every single day. And what we do know and what we don't know is not our guide for the way that we walk that path. So yeah, thank you, Robb. Is there instead of asking, like putting a tiny little, not a tiny, but like a beautiful bow on this conversation, what I like to do instead is ask, is there a question that wants your attention now? Not that we're going to answer that, but rather as an additional exploration for all of us as we step out from this space. Is there a question that is emerging for you?
First thing that came up is, who do I need to forgive? That's a powerful question.
Yeah.
There's a great quote, and it's attributed to Mandela, which is, resentment is like drinking poison and expecting it to kill your enemies. And I see it with that too, where I don't think I'm holding any grudges, and no one comes to mind right away, but now I feel like I need to go sit and journal and reflect on where I need to give some grace and some forgiveness, and knowing that will just create more openness and create more clay and more space.
Yeah. I also want to give you this here on the screen, what Sebastian said. You might be able to see that on your side as well. But yes, that all of those around us are beautiful reflections of who we are. And I love the idea of looking at forgiveness and grace too, because for those of us listening, we might feel 100% resonance with the forgiveness, or perhaps it's grace. Where can we be more loving to ourselves as we go back out into our days. So thank you all for being here. Robb, thank you for sharing so fully, so openly. It's been an absolute pleasure. Where can people go to connect with you further?
So we're streaming this on LinkedIn. It is my main online hang. It is the place I spend the most amount of time. If you are an Instagram person, I moonlight there a little bit. I post there a little bit. There's stuff that gets published automatically on my feed, but I do show up in the stories there sometimes and just share some thoughts. I think I probably will end up sharing an in-the-moment thought as soon as we hit pause here. And if you want to dive in further, growthhabit.org. There is a bunch of free things and trainings, and I have a weekly newsletter where I give a lot of practical tips and strategies to help you grow your impact in your business. So those are the places you can dive in deeper into my world.
Beautiful, Robb. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And this is a reoccurring event. It's happening every other week at this point, and it's all about combining snail mail with live video to create conversations like these and catalyze us forward in ways that we cannot imagine at the start. And I'm pretty sure that we achieved that. Not that this is really geared towards an outcome, but wow, and if you want to, I know that this is going to grow into something, and I am letting it emerge naturally. So if you'd like to be the first to hear more about that, I'd love for you to join the Reframe newsletter. I'll drop the link here in the chat. LinkedIn's my main place too. Thank you all for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, if you didn't say anything in the chat there, feel free to DM both of us as well. I think I'm very open. I'm going to assume that you're pretty open too, Robb. Yes. So yeah, looking forward to connecting with all of you. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.